Welcome, millionaires. The teleseminar number 61. My name is Haziq Ali, and welcome to another edition of our Obsessed with Success. This is a great time to be calling your family and friends and text messaging them, making sure that they're on, because today we're going to cover some mind-blowing differences between the wealthy and the working poor. Some mind-blowing differences in statistics between what makes somebody live regular versus helping somebody to live rich. I hope you guys learned a lot last week. If you didn't catch last week's call, it was all about the subconscious mind. It was all about goal setting, how to use affirmation. Make sure you get with one of your family or friends that were on the call so they can get you their notes. If not, then you can hit somebody up and find out about the replay information. It's really easy to access, and you can always find those notes afterwards. But while we're going over everything, let's just make sure that we're being really, really serious about our goals. While you guys are text messaging your family and friends about today's call, I'll just remind you that one easy way to turn a dream into a goal is to write it down. And that's exactly what you want to be doing with these calls. So right now you can text message your friends, 641-715-3200. Again, that's 641-715-3200. The code is 656-202-pound. And you kind of want to take this serious in terms of taking notes, is my point. So while you're getting your pen and pad ready, I'll just let you know that we have an insane amount of information that we're going to give out today. So really be concentrating on this. Really make sure you're ready to write this stuff down, because I think that this could easily be the most powerful call that we've had all year, because it's really hard to look at these facts when they're just staring you at the face and not put yourself on one side of the equation or the other. A lot of times we overlook the fact that it's not really what our intentions are. It's not really how inspired or motivated we are. It all comes down to our actions. It all comes down to the fact that we're either going to have winning habits or we're going to have losing habits. And that's what today's call is going to be all about. So I hope you guys are ready. I really appreciate all of you for being here. You know what? Let's just start to get into it, because we have a lot to cover. I see text messages like a lot of the people I was waiting on have checked in, so that's really good. Okay, so we don't normally start with the book of the week, but I'm going to go ahead and start with it just to reward you guys that are here on time. And while we're on that subject, make sure that you set your alarm in your phone, so that way nobody has to remind you. Set your alarm for every week, 5:15 p.m. Eastern. If you're on the West Coast, it's 2:15. The reason I design it as 5:15 is because here on the East Coast, a lot of people are just in traffic. And you're going to see why that's so important in just a second. But one thing that the wealthy do is they use their time efficiently. So I want you to be aware that this is every Wednesday at 5:15 p.m. Okay, but let's get started. So we don't normally start with the book of the week, but I'm going to go ahead and give it to you right at the beginning. There's a book called Rich Habits from a guy named Tom Corley. You spell his name Corely. And that's where some of today's information is going to come from, because there are some amazing differences between the wealthy and the working poor that I don't know about you, but no one ever taught me this stuff in school. No one ever taught me this stuff in elementary. When it was simple enough, I could have understood it even then. No one explained it to me in middle school. No one told me about it in high school, and I have a problem with that. But we're about to fix it today. So, rich or poor, which category do you actually want to be in? Most people want to be rich, but most people are poor. Why is that? There's got to be some big differences between rich people and poor people, right? And if you study carefully, what you'll find out is that rich and successful people are able to produce amazing results in their life, versus the poor that seem to be able to create really amazing excuses. We're all creative. It's just that the poor people you know are Leonardo da Vinci when it comes to explaining why they're living in poverty. To be rich and successful, you don't need to be lucky. You don't have to work extremely hard. You don't even need a diploma or a degree. What you need is the right mindset. And where does mindset come from? It comes from conditioning. It comes from habit. The right habit always leads you towards the financial abundance you desire. The wrong habit will always lead you towards poverty. So before we get into some statistics, let's just talk about the 7 main differences. The 7 main differences between rich and poor people. The first one you want to write down is that rich people believe that they create their lives, while poor people believe that life happens to them. Can you see why rich and successful people are able to create amazing results in their life right now? It's simply because they believe they're the ones in control. They believe that they're the ones that are responsible. And when you break responsible down, what does it really say? It says that they're response-able, right? They feel like they're the ones creating their future, not the economy, not their boss, and not some kind of luck. On the other hand, poor people always give excuses. They blame it on the circumstances. They blame it on their family or something that didn't go according to their plan. Whenever you believe that life happens to you, you'll lose the power to change and the power to control your future. You must believe that you're the one who's creating your future, not other people and not these weird events. Number 2, rich people play the money game to win, but poor people play the money game to not lose. This is a huge, huge difference. This is a huge difference. Have you ever seen some people invest in the stock market? Or have you ever seen how certain people respond to the chance to participate in an opportunity? You see some people that are so afraid, they're so scared that they'll lose money that they form a mindset that blocks their creativity. They form a mindset of investing not to lose. How many of us have heard the expression, scared money don't make money? Well, that's not just a cliche. That's not just rhetoric. That's the way the rich live. Number 3, rich people think and focus on opportunities. Poor people focus on obstacles. When you're faced with problems, what do you focus on? Are you focused on the problem, thinking how bad the situation is going to be? Or are you focusing on the solution? Are you thinking about how you can solve and even turn this situation into an opportunity? It's Napoleon Hill that always talks about how every seeming failure has within it the seed of greater or at least equivalent benefit. Sounds good, but works better. Think about this carefully. No matter who you are, you'll definitely be faced with all kinds of choices in your life. And when you need to decide to move on, try to notice, what are you thinking about when you call yourself thinking? Are you focusing on the solution or are you focusing on the problem? Let's move on. Number 4, rich people dare to dream big. The poor people always think small. Now, if you were little and you told your parents, maybe you want to make $1 million, do they tell you, why do you need so much money? You can live a very good lifestyle if you got a job that has good pay and good benefits. You don't need to be a millionaire. If so, let me tell you, that's a huge red flag. Because good is the sworn enemy of great. And I don't know about you, but this statement happened a lot to me when I was growing up. And I definitely believe when they say that poor people tend to think small while the wealthy always think huge. We've profiled billionaire after millionaire after rags to riches story. And one thing has rung true among all the examples. You will never fly higher than your dreams. With poor people, they always think that rich people are greedy because they're always thinking big. Why are you always thinking about is it true that you're being greedy if you think big? I don't know. But I kind of think you're being greedy and selfish if you don't use your resources to their full capacity. Don't you owe it to everybody around you to create a better life for them? Don't you want your family to live good? What you want to do is think big. What you want to do is create abundance for these people right now. So let's move on. I want to hurry up and get to these statistics. Number 5, rich people are committed to their dreams. The poor are just dreaming about their dreams. And I know that's kind of obvious, but if you're not committed to be rich, you'll never be rich. Now, what you can be is poor without being committed to it. All you have to do to end up poor is just let things distract you, right? You don't even have to have any commitment to end up there. This is what makes it so dangerous. You don't have to be great. You don't have to be good by accident. You definitely don't have to be, you can definitely be mediocre by accident, but you have to be great on purpose. But not the mentality of poor people. They'll just think about how good it would be if they ended up rich, but they'll never do anything about their dreams. They know they can't afford that luxury car if they have a low-paid job. The thing is, they never do anything to change it. On the contrary, the rich and successful are committed. They will do whatever it takes. Now, it's an interesting, I think it wasn't Abraham Lincoln. It wasn't Abraham Lincoln, but there is a huge difference between doing your best and doing what's required, isn't there? What the wealthy do, what a commitment makes you do, is what's required. Let's move on. Number 6, rich people associate with the rich. Poor people associate with the poor. They asked Warren Buffett one time, they said, hey man, what would you do if you lost it all and had to start over? He didn't even think twice. It didn't take him 30 seconds. He's like, oh, that's simple. Immediately, I would do whatever it took to surround myself with people that are doing much, much better than me. A rising tide lifts all boats, but you got to be in the same body of water. Do you have any rich friends, or are all your friends poor? Now, I'm not suggesting you need to stop making friends with poor people. What I'm saying is try to get to know more about the wealthy. The more you mix with them, the more you'll think like them. And making money is a mentality. It's not an action. If you think like them, you'll start to create amazing results, just like them. Environment is much, much stronger than willpower, and we'll get to this again in a minute. But if most of your friends are poor and their working salary all are below, $2,000, you'll be having the same range of salary most of the time. But if you associate with the rich who are making $2,000 a day instead of a month, you'll start to see the possibility of what you can accomplish. This changes your thinking. $2,000 will become a small amount for you once you change your mindset. Number 7, and then we're going to get into these statistics, is that rich people are good learners, while poor people think they've already learned everything in the world. Right? How many of us know some people like that? One of the fastest ways to financial abundance is to learn directly from people who've already achieved this status. If you're not willing to learn, you'll never be successful. If you want to get the best pay, you must be the best. And the only way to be the best is to learn from the best. I know that sounds really simple, but how many people use that in their lives? So, going back to our book of the week, when financial planner and author of Rich Habits, Tom Corley, spent more than 5 years observing the daily differences between 350 different rich people and 350 different poor people, poverty-stricken, he observed not only how they live and work, but how they sleep, how they eat, how they exercise. But first, how are we defining rich? Which is still a few steps below wealthy, but it's still a few steps above where most of America is, and most of the world in general is. Here was his parameter. Rich was $160,000 a year, at least,
and then 3.2 million in assets. So rich was 160,000 a year and 3.2 million in assets. So what was poor? Poor was 30,000 yearly and 5,000 in assets. On average, the poor people that he studied made $30,000 a year, which is right at about what, $2,500 a month, and then $5,000 in assets. The poverty line, I believe, is right at about, well, you can Google it. I don't want to say anything wrong. But yeah, Google that for yourself. What is the poverty line in America? What is the total? Maybe somebody can tell us during the Q&A in a minute. But the main differences that Mr. Corley found in this study had to do with the habits of the rich compared with those of the poor. He found that it was mostly about the habits. Not all that surprising to some of us, right? So what's the first one? I thought this was kind of interesting. 70% of the wealthy eat less than 300 calories of junk food per day. 70% of the wealthy eat less than 300 calories of junk food every day. Now, what do you think the percentage is for poor people? What percentage of poor people eat more than 300 calories of junk food a day? Would you believe it's 97%? Amazing to think that to get out of the poor mindset and into the one of the wealthy, that eating would play such a big part of it. But is that really amazing? What is feeding your brain? Which is what's powering all of your thought activity, right? What are you putting in your engine? Number two, 23% of the wealthy gamble. Only 23%. Roughly 1 out of every 4 of the wealthy gamble. I saw a bunch of them when I was last in Vegas. I'm not even going to tell you how. I'm not a big gambler. For me, it's strictly fun. Like some of y'all saw it on my Instagram or my Facebook. I find the fun in taking a little to a lot. I don't find the fun in taking a lot to a little. And as we all know, all of those lights in Vegas, all those lights in Atlantic City are paid for by people that swore they had a system, right? I remember I was in a taxi cab, and the driver was like, oh, man, all you got to do is, that's how they always hit you. All you got to do is, and my homeboy was ready to go with his system. I was like, bro, he drives a cab. Anyway, I digress. 23% of the wealthy gamble versus 52% of the poor. More than half of the poor gamble. I always say we're way too young to play the lotto. 23% of the wealthy gamble, 52% of the poor. Okay, let's move on to number 3, the third statistic about the differences between the rich and the regular, the wealthy and the working poor. Number 3, 80% of the wealthy are focused on accomplishing a single goal. 80% of the wealthy focus on accomplishing a single goal. Do you know it's only 12% of the poor? Only 12% of the poor focus on the same thing. All right, let's move on. Number 4, 63% of the wealthy listen to audiobooks during their commute to work or their commute from work. That means being on this call, you're automatically in a wealthy mindset. Because 6 out of every 10 wealthy people are not listening or worrying about Future the rapper. They're worrying about Future the now. What percentage of the poor do you think do it? 5%. And I got to go ahead and say that I don't think they're going to be in that category for long. It's like we always say at Millionaire Minded, Either your mind is going to expand to match your goals, or your goals are going to shrink to match your mind. Number 5, 63% of the wealthy, oh no, we already did that one. Number 6, 81% of the wealthy keep a to-do list. 81% of the wealthy keep a to-do list. How many of you are using the technique that we taught easily about 12 weeks ago that talks about how the most productive system, and a buddy of mine, a teammate of mine, was just now telling me how the Army made her do the same thing. Where every night before you go to sleep, write down the 6 things you want to accomplish the next day. Sounds real simple. Not a lot of people do it. Sounds real simple. Not a lot of people do it. Write down the 6 things you want to do the next day. The next day, knock out everything you can. Make sure you're starting with the top priority list, the top priority on your list. Whatever you don't get to, you move it to the next day's list. Pretty simple habit. Not a lot of people do it. Only 19% of the poor. Number 7, 63% of the wealthy have parents who made them as children read 2 or more nonfiction books a month. 2 or more nonfiction books a month versus only 3% for the poor. 63% of wealthy parents make their children read 2 or more nonfiction books a month versus only 3% of the poor. That's saying a lot. I like this next one. Number 8, 70%, 7 out of 10 of the wealthy volunteer 10 hours or more versus only 3% of the poor. I thought that this one was really interesting. Number 9 I found interesting because one thing about a mentor of mine, Mr. Rico McDaniel, is that this is one of the most considerate dudes. Like, you'll be going through something, he won't send you a text message. He will give you a call. Well, do you know 80% of wealthy people make happy birthday calls versus only 11% of the poor? Number 10, 67% of the wealthy write down their goals. Sort of like the to-do list thing. But now we're talking about longer-term goals, like we talked about last week, right? Almost 7 out of 10 of the wealthy write their goals down versus only 17% for the poor. Number 11, 88% of the wealthy read for education 30 minutes or more each day. 30 minutes or more each day. 88% of the wealthy read for 30 minutes or more every day for education. That's like 9 out of every 10 of the people that he profiled. Now, what is it for the poor? This will blow your mind. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Blew mine. 2%. 2 out of every 100. 2 out of every 100. That is insane. Okay, number 12. 6% of the wealthy speak their minds. Is that cold? 6% of the wealthy just speak their minds, but not the poor. 70% of the poor, they say it, I'm just keeping it real. I'm just keeping it real. It is a wealth habit to keep your mouth shut. It's a wealth habit to not say everything that comes into your mind. You've got to learn to have discipline and control your tongue if you want to be wealthy. Number 13, 79% of the wealthy network for 5 hours or more every week. 8 out of 10 of the wealthy network for 5 hours or more every week versus only 16% of the poor. Number 14, that's pretty self-explanatory. So is this next one. Would you believe that 67% of the wealthy watch 1 hour of TV or less per day? versus only 23% of the poor. I love this next one. This is another clear way to set up your life so that it's looking a lot different within the month. 46% of the wealthy wake up 3 hours before they have to work. 3 hours before they have to work. Versus only 3% of the poor. Number 16. 6% of the wealthy watch reality TV. 6%. 6 out of every 100 of wealthy people might get caught watching some reality TV. Do you know it's 78% of the poor? Number 17. 74% of the wealthy teach good daily success habits to their children. Like I always say, if a CEO teaches his children to be a CEO, what does a poor worker teach their kids to be? Well, yeah, 1% of the poor teach their children good daily success habits. And it's probably less than 1%, right? But he probably had to give it something on a scale if one person did it. But again, either that person's not going to be poor very long, or my name is not Haziq Ali. Number 18, 84% of the wealthy believe that good habits create opportunity versus only 4% of the poor. That kind of ties into the next one too, but I'll repeat it because I know some of you guys are taking notes. 84% of the wealthy believe good habits create opportunity versus 4% of the poor. Number 19, 76% of the wealthy believe bad habits create bad luck versus 9% of the poor. Number 20, 86% of the wealthy believe in lifelong educational self-improvement. Remember, we just now said that the wealthy always seem to feel like they have a lot more they can learn. But a lot of times the poor think they already know it all. Well, only 5% of the poor believe in lifelong educational self-improvement. The last one that we'll cover today, number 21, 86% of the wealthy love to read versus only 26% of the poor. So, man, I'm not even going to do a lot more on this call. I just think that those statistics speak for themselves. If you have any comments, if you have any feedback, then please push *6, say your name, where you're calling in from, and let's hear your comments or your feedback on this. Do you feel like these ring true? Have you seen any of this in your own life? Let's hear it. Anybody got anything? *6 will unmute you.
Hey, Haziq, this is Desiree from South Carolina. Can you repeat number 20 for me right quick?
Number 20 was that 86% of the wealthy believe in lifelong educational self-improvement versus only 5% of the poor. You know, they call it a poor listener for a reason. You know, like poor people literally don't listen to nothing. They already know. Why are they going to listen to you?
This is true. But I feel like each one of these statistics are very true. Like, I guess for me, growing up in the hood around a lot of poor-minded people, this is exactly how they think. This is exactly how they operate.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? And it's amazing to have these statistics where you can just make certain little moves and throw yourself into the world of the wealthy. I love this. That's why I feel like this is one of the. I know I'm not telling a lot of the stories I normally tell and stuff like that, but I feel like just pound for pound, this information right here is some of the most life-changing that we've ever given out. But like, I'm really glad you're here, Desiree.
Haziq, this is Japping from North Carolina.
Hey, Japping, how you doing?
Hey.
I'm doing great. You had said, I think it was number 8, that 70% of the rich volunteer. Did they give a list of which organizations that they volunteer for?
No, they didn't with this, but just the fact that you're committing yourself to service is going to put you in a wealthy mindset. What the wealthy know that nobody taught the working poor, right? What the wealthy know that the working poor never found out is that the most selfish thing you can do is serve somebody else. That's the key to abundance, service. That's what every holy book reminds you of. That's what every person you consider great did for you to consider them great, right? That's why we know some of these names we know that have national holidays, whether you're talking about Martin Luther King, whether you're talking about, you know, your Mother Teresa, your Steve Jobs. All they did was get out here and serve. Now, some of them did it for profit because it was under the guise of a business, but that does not take away the fact that they had to serve to live in abundance, and not just serve themselves or their own family, but they had to serve the world for us to consider them great. So you're darn right, that got to include volunteering. So yeah, great distinction, Japin, great distinction.
And
hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Haziq, can you hear me?
What's your name and where you from? Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Joey Lewis, and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I put, I believe, 4 people on the call today, 3 or 4. And, you know, I wanted to touch on the fact that about 2 weeks ago is when I went from writing down my to-do list the day of to the night before. And, you know, I can testify that's really been helping me out just these past 2 weeks. I've woke up more focused instead of trying to wake up and then get focused, and I think that's really helped. And also, on top of making a to-do list, it really helped when I made a to-don't list. And so every time I go to do one of these things that wasn't leading me towards my goals, I would go from doing that thing on that list to doing something on my to-do list, and that, I think, made a bigger difference.
I like that, a to-don't list. I love it. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Joey. That is great. That's great feedback, and, like, I hope everybody wrote that down. Like, write a to-don't list. I love it. Anybody else have anything?
Haziq, this is Tracy from Atlanta. I listened to the list that you gave out. It really made me think about how I grew up and the words I used to hear from my parents and other grown-ups and the mindset of some of the people I've been around for a while. And I totally agree with the list, and I believe it to be true. I also want to say to that last brother, I really like that last one, the to-don't list. That's something I'm going to start doing, so you just inspired me to not just do my to-do list, but also do a to-don't list. So,
man, I love it. A lot about staying on a straight path is not going astray. A whole lot about what we consider godly has a lot to do with focus. A lot of what we consider devilish has a lot to do with distraction. I hope everybody understands that I know that it's not all about money. It's not all about being rich. I totally get it. But if you guys have ever heard of this whole thing you hear conspiracy theorists talking about called the New World Order, let me break it down really simple for you. All it means, everybody, is that they're getting rid of the middle class. There's going to be no more middle class. You're either going to be super rich or you're going to be a part of the herd. So what that means is that the only worthy use of your time is either hanging out with people who have a hunger for more. If not, you're just hanging out with the poor. And if you hang with 9 broke friends, you're bound to be the 10th. And we've all heard that. So it's like, let's start living it. I'm really proud of all of you guys for being here. Does anybody else have anything to share?
Yes, my name is Daniel Hawker. I was actually new to the call. It's my first time. I was lurking on Facebook. I saw this, and I decided to get on the call just to hear about what the mindset was. I do like number 10, like everyone else said, the don't do list. I do like the percentage that you basically was saying. I just wanted to introduce myself because I like what I've been hearing so far, because I have been trying to learn this industry a little bit better without struggling and not look for the want of wanting money all the time.
Indeed. Well, yeah, man. Well, welcome to the call. I'm glad that you made it on. You know, a good way to pay it forward or to be of service or to volunteer is just to make sure that you spread the word to as many people as you can. If you notice, Joey Lewis, when he said that, like, oh, I put 4 people on the call today, how can he not live in abundance when he's serving his friends and family like that? I mean, there's not a lot of other ways that are going to be this interactive to learn while you're sitting in traffic. So we consider this to be I get paid, you know, literally thousands of dollars to go and share the same kind of information that I do for free on these things every week. And that's not to impress anybody. That's just to impress upon you that this is really, really serious. So it's like this information could change your life if you're willing to change it. Now, if you aren't, then it's just more words, and you might as well be listening to, you know, some reality TV right now. But the whole point is that if you're willing to take this stuff and apply it to your life, genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. So let's get busy. Anybody else have anything?
Haziq.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, this is Gia speaking.
Hi, Gia.
Taya's sitting right next to me. We've got a splitter, and we are driving cross country, and we are checking in. So happy to hear. You know, I wanted to comment. You said the one thing where the statistic around wealthy people aren't talking so much, and you said you kind of discipline what you say. And the other side of that coin is they're busy listening. They're listening for something they can learn. They're listening for someone that might be really worthy to have in their network. And then they get on that and connect, and yeah, it's being the empty cup ready to be filled instead of a full cup that doesn't take in anything new that could change your life and change your family's life.
So true, Gia. Thank you so much for that. I always try my best to explain to people that, you know, we always talk about how success leaves clues. Well, let's really be honest, right? God has a pretty successful system, and he gave us 2 ears, 2 eyes, but only 1 mouth. What could he be trying to say to us? And then even when you listen to language and you hear them saying things like, oh, this person, like I talked about earlier, is a poor listener. Isn't that interesting that we use the phrase poor listener? Not they're a bad listener or they're a horrible listener. We somehow manage to say they're a poor listener. It's a really big clue. Thank you for that, Gia. Anybody else have anything?
Hi, Zeke. What's going on now? CG, North Carolina.
Okay, how you doing, CG?
Man, doing good. I just wanted to ask you, what was the book or the guy's name that you got this from?
Oh, the name of the book is, the book of the week is Rich Habit, from a financial planner named Tom Corley, Corely. Tom Corley.
Okay. Hey, appreciate you, my man.
Appreciate you for being here, CG. Okay, does anybody else have anything before we get out of here? I want to remind everybody to set their alarm 5:15 every Wednesday. We're right here sharing all of the strategies and secrets from the best to ever do it. We call it Obsessed with Success because I feel like you've got to fill your mind with what you want. It's not just enough to say what you don't. The whole purpose of this is that if we do not get each other off the bottom rung of Maslow's pyramid, then we're all going to be struggling for our basic needs, which are basically food, clothing, and shelter. What makes that weird is that sin gets fuzzy, crime gets fuzzy, doing other people wrong gets a little weird for you, and you're not even sure if it's wrong, if that's the only way this man feels like he could feed his kids. They can kill, they can cheat, they can steal, and feel okay about it if that's the only way they see they can feed their young. Well, we call that hell. And the only way to free yourself from hell, where people are living in hell and then wonder why they're surrounded by devils, is to self-actualize. You've got to be what you can be. Whatever a man or woman can be, they must be. We call that self-actualization. And what we got to do is transform the education to that of self-actualization rather than occupation. The industrial age is over. This is no longer this time where we need people to work in factories, where we need people to turn knobs and turn keys and push things in. In 7 to 10 years, 20 years tops, computers will be doing everything. There won't even be social media anymore. Computers will be writing the books. Holograms will be teaching your children. The only way that you can make yourself invaluable to this new economy that's approaching is that you find your unique talent and begin to access it. The only thing that will make you valuable and therefore have a net worth is your ability to find, develop, and access your unique abilities. You've got to find a way to make it so that the things you know how to do become rarer and rarer and more rare. Only then will you be able to rise up the economic ladder. Everything else is getting outsourced or done away with and made obsolete by the computer age. They have now mapped the human genome. You understand, 10 years ago there was not a smartphone even, much less social media. You've got people that are designing their lives around being social media experts, and it won't even exist in a few years. The number one skill that you can be building into yourself is emotional intelligence. You want to learn how to deal with other people. Emotional IQ is only thing you can count on in the future. So get your skill sets up in that area. But we're winding down now. I know we've been here close to our allotted 45 minutes. If no one else has anything, then I love you all. I'm glad you guys were here this week. Make sure you set your alarm so that you're here every 5:15, every Wednesday Eastern. And yeah, somebody saying something? Okay, well, millionaire-minded, y'all. If you do not expand your mind to match your goals, then your goals are going to shrink your mind. Your goals are going to shrink to match your mind. I love you all. I'll see you next week.